So many times when I work with my coaching clients, my therapy clients, really anyone that I'm talking to about figuring out this whole midlife thing, figuring out how to find that centered life, what we start to kind of go around in circles about is what am I looking for? Am I looking to be happy? Some people start from that premise, like I've not been happy or I'm not feeling happy about where things are and what does happy mean? Some other people are more about like, what would it be like to feel a fulfilled life? Like I'm aligned with a purpose. Like I know, like I'm leaving this earth a better place than how I found it in the first place, or leaving a better place for my own kids or the people who are coming behind me, that kind of thing. But honestly, when we keep going circles and circles and circles, what I really find is that a lot of folks that are looking for coaching are feeling stuck, don't know what to do next. What really is happening is that they are not at peace. They aren't at peace. That's it. It's a life of hustling and hustling and hustling and trying this and trying that, and they're just tired, honestly. And if that sounds like you, if there's some piece of this that's resonating, that you're spinning around, is it that I'm looking to be happy? Is it that I'm looking for purpose? Is it that I'm looking to find contentedness in my life? Or is it just that I feel just tired and like I cannot find peace in where I'm at in my life presently? Then I want you to keep listening today.
I know your deep, dark secret. You don't like your life. You're a woman in midlife, and for the past 2 decades or more, you've poured yourself in to other people. You've poured yourself into your career, your family, and yet on the inside, you feel broken. And that's no way to be. I'm Dr. Natalie Marr. I'm a clinical psychologist and a life transition expert. It wasn't too long ago that I was in your shoes, waking up in my early 40s, thinking I've got 2 failed marriages and I'm a single mom for the second time in my life. And I just knew that I could do better, that I could feel better. Fortunately for you, I have about 20 years experience clinically. And so I've created a method that will help you learn to love your story. I know that the story that you're telling yourself about your life feels awful. And I know that you think that you can't change that. I assure you, you can. And when we work together, I'm gonna help you to craft a different story, a story that you love, a story that makes you want to get up every single day. Let's work together to help you love your story.
Are you on my mailing list yet? Because if you're not, you really should be. You want to join at learntoloveyourstory.com. If you scroll down, I'm giving away a freebie for you. Honestly, you know what it is? A free course. I sell online courses, but this is a course just for you. And it's about freeing yourself, letting go of what others' expectations and ideas are for you. You know, that nagging self-doubt in your head, it's usually fueled by your consideration of what others think of you over your consideration of what you think of you. And so I teach you in my video all about what is underlying that kind of self-doubt and how to get out of that conundrum. And I give you a workbook that goes with it that helps you to build the skill sets that you're going to need for that. So please make sure you're on my mailing list, because at the least, you're going to get a free gift. And at the most, you're going to hear about all the things that we're doing on Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving and learntoloveyourstory.com. And you don't want to be missing out on any of the new things that'll be coming your way.
Welcome back, everyone, to Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving. We had a couple interviews intermittently in there for the summer, but I'm back again just to talk at you. And today I'm actually just going to talk at you. We're not going to revisit one of my favorite podcasts from the series, although I might do those a little bit more before the end of the summer, I promise. There will be just a normal rhythm once we hit fall, once I hit my stride again. But today I want to talk about this idea of peace. I want to talk about how so very many of us have been, pulled and pushed and prodded and told what to do and told this is the life to have. And we're living a life in pieces. And you can't live a life of peace when you're living in pieces. That is really the reality of it. And that's what I wanted to get down to today. I just think that we're always on, that women in particular really push themselves to be, the best mom, throwing the best birthday party for their kids and doing the best, schlepping around to soccer games, or the best, executive and, coming up with the best ideas at work. And what ends up happening to us over time is that we really have partitioned out aspects of ourselves. I have the face I put on when I'm at work. I have the face that I put on when I'm at home. And you forget that when we're not showing up as all of us all the time, that it takes a ton of energy. I mean, you're pushing that, closet clothes that has all those other aspects of yourself, all those other pieces of you, and being out here with this mask right now. And that effort can be Herculean after a while. It really wears on us. And if you're in that kind of pace in your life all the time, finding peace is really problematic. And that, when I'm starting to work with people that I coach, that sometimes comes up like right up front. That sometimes comes up as the main event of what they have to work on with me. Because I know that if you're not at peace, then anything that I offer you here, any of the coaching I do, any of the podcasts I have, any of the courses online, it won't matter really, because it'll be an added thing on your to-do list. It'll be, oh, okay, well, I tried that diet. Now I'm going to try this diet, oh, okay. Well, I tried this thing at work for time management. Now I'm going to try this thing. Like, it just becomes another thing that you're adding on to a long list of things that you're trying to do to get unstuck, to feel like you're living your best life. And really what we have to get at is finding some peace for you. So I wanted to talk about this today because I really think that I'm hearing it a lot in the work that I'm doing with folks right now. And I thought, well, what better time than to just bring it all out into the open? And I recently was listening to a podcast, and I wish I could remember what the podcast was because I would totally put it in the notes. But I don't even remember the guest's name. It's so terrible. But the phrasing that this coach had used was, we really need to use all of the items in the closet. Like, if we want to show up in our lives in a peaceful, integral way, like we're all together, all feeling like we got all parts of ourselves, then we got to use all the ingredients. And part of why we struggle with this as women is there's skeletons in our closets that we don't want out. We don't want to use it. We don't want to show up. We don't want to talk about those parts of ourselves. It's our mistakes, right? It's our regrets. It's the things that we've done in life we're not so proud of, right? Maybe we weren't even proud of it when it was happening, but for sure now in hindsight, we're like, had that stuff at the back of the closet because I don't want anybody to know. But part of what happens when we're pushing back these aspects of us that we're not so proud of all the time is that we just end up living a life in pieces, not peace. We cannot figure out how we would incorporate that aspect of ourselves and still be proud of it. But here's the weird thing about this, folks, is I want you to think about, some of the self-help kind of people that you're most drawn to. Why? Think about it for a second. Like, what is it about them that seemed to pull you in? It's usually their stories, and it's usually not their stories of, look at me, I'm doing all the things and I'm amazing. That kind of stuff shuts most of us down. It's usually the stories that we definitely hear ourselves in, right? But even more so, it's when they give us permission to be all of us. It's when they tell us about the things that they've been through that are the hardest. And it's why I am so transparent on my podcast and tell people all the time, like, I don't have all my stuff together. Man, I'm lucky. I'm lucky. If on a good day, I'm not like totally flopping here and there. And I have to take my own advice all the time. And I share with you guys when I take my own advice. It's why I do this though, because I know when you hear about the fact that I struggle, it makes it feel better for you because you're like, oh, God, like that's the piece that starts to set in. Okay, thank God. I don't have to have all of it together. I need to, get it all of my butterflies flying in the same direction instead of causing me a bunch of anxiety in my stomach. That's what Dr. Natalie is trying to get at. And that is really the point. If you're not using all aspects of yourself in everything that you're doing, then the hiding of that stuff becomes really problematic and is what probably is getting in your way. If it's not the biggest part of what's getting in your way, it's definitely a large contributor to that. So I want us to kind of unpack this today and think about this. Like, what are these aspects of us that we tend to hide? Why do we tend to hide things, right? Well, for starters, a lot of it has to do with all of the programming and conditioning socially, culturally, family wise that we've gotten growing up until now. There are a lot of really strong messages about who and what we should be and how and, what it should look like when we're doing it well. I mean, this is the quintessential stuff like a woman's body should look small, should be a certain weight, should have a certain look to it, it shouldn't age at all. And so as we're hitting midlife and our social currency is falling off because wrinkles are showing up and our bodies are aging and growing in different places that we weren't expecting because that is part of our biology. We're really frustrated with our looks, thinking like we have some sort of fault here, like we've done something wrong and we're super terrible to ourselves in showing up to this. But this is a really good example of this piece of us, our body, is really frustrating us because it's not fitting the programming and conditioning. So we want to hide aspects of ourselves. We want to put all of our Spanx on and hide the fact that we have our middle that is growing because during perimenopause and menopausal years, this is how the body changes, right? You might even stay the same weight. It's just going to shift to different parts of your body, right? So this is the kind of thing I mean by programming and conditioning. We have a lot of outside voices that have told us this is what you should look like. This is how you should show up in your world. And we want to push away and hide the fact that we're not meeting those expectations. So, let's say this shows up in our work life. Well, you should have gotten a degree. What if you didn't? What if you went a different route in your life and you don't have a graduate degree, a college degree? You just have, lived experience, lots of work experience. You came out of high school and you went straight into the workforce. Then you maybe had a family, then you came back. It doesn't, it didn't meet what you thought you needed, but you want to hide that aspect of yourself, right? Maybe you're in a faith community. And they have lots of rules in religious faith communities. Maybe you don't meet all those rules. And maybe you want to fit in with the ladies, but you don't want them to know these aspects of you. Like, oh, yeah, when I was in my 20s, I did some things. So you're trying to hide that stuff away, but you're trying to be in this community at the same time, trying to fit in. And I think this behavior of always trying to kind of hold yourself accountable rather to the programming and conditioning, the rules that you've been hearing are what it takes to be a good version of you or the best version of you. These are going to hold you back from finding peace. When you let those rules go and you let yourself love yourself for who you are as you are, you do find a lot of peace in your life. It's like a exhale of sorts, right? Well, some of that external voice then becomes an internal voice because believe me, it doesn't stop there, right? So now we're kind of holding ourselves accountable. One of the ways that this shows up for women, perfectionism. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It is over and over again what I have seen in my work as a therapist, as a psychologist. It's shown up in my work as a coach. It's just shown up in the world. But what is this real, what's behind this perfectionism thing, right? Well, it's this idea that somehow we are not good enough unless we're doing the best all the time. And yet when you line that up with who we are as humans mess up. Humans are fallible, right? We can't be perfect all of the time. So if we're not letting ourselves like take a minute and take a beat and take care of ourselves and allow ourselves to make mistakes, then we're at that breakneck pace of always being in pursuit of perfectionism. And being in pursuit of perfectionism doesn't give you room to breathe. It doesn't give you that great exhale. It doesn't let you live in peace. So if perfectionism tends to be something that you're seeing in your life, that might be one of the things that you need to let go of. So I think that's one of the areas where we're getting a lot of this is that it's impacted by who we grew up around and what those rules were and what we thought we should be by now, right? So there's that aspect of it. So part of it is that programming and conditioning piece. And then you get over onto the other side of that, and that has bled into how you treat yourself as a human. You probably don't treat yourself as a human. You want me to be honest? I don't think that self-care is something that any of us think about when we've been programmed and conditioned as women to be human givers, to be, elevated by being selfless, by giving of ourselves, by caring for others. Like there is some social notoriety that we've built up over being the caregiver of the gender species, like that, of the gender that we are. There is some social currency that came with being the best caregiver that we could be. So in that pursuit, we are constantly forgetting that there is a human behind the caregiving and that we're not serving her or helping her in any way. And over time, that pace is going to break us down. And then we don't have peace, right? So it could be that by the time you hit midlife, the crisis of it all isn't really anything about what we're doing in the world. Because I'm a caregiver, right? Like I have family that I caregive for. I have a job that is really meant to be in service to other people. So I don't want to give a bad rap to being somebody who is a caregiver. What I want us to realize is that when we don't even see our own humanity, when we treat ourselves inhumanely, like a robot that just should keep being able to put that out into the world, we're gonna find ourselves slipping. That's the reality. That is the reality. There's no way we can keep up that pace. And so by the time you get to midlife, one of the cracks really is the fact that you haven't learned any way of checking in with yourself and taking care of yourself. I talk about this in my self-care online course as boundaries. What I really want you to be able to understand is that boundaries start with knowing what your own needs are. So before you ever can set a boundary, create a boundary, shore yourself up so that you're not leaking out energy, you first need to know you don't have the energy and that you need the energy. You first need to know what those needs really are. And that's a place where I think that women in midlife really need some growth. They need to be looking at how to do self-reflection, how to check in with themselves, how to notice in their bodies, in the way that they're thinking, in the, stuff that they're seeing go down in their life. Like, what does that mean? What is that telling me about what I need? What is that telling me about what I'm not getting? And I don't think that they treat themselves humanely. And if I ask them a question like, would you do that to a friend or a family member or whatever, hands down, no way. The people I love and serve in my life, I treat way better. it's still too far sometimes for them to see themselves treating themselves that way. If this is you, don't feel shame about this. You've literally been programmed to do this to yourself. I was programmed to do this to myself. I was terrible to myself. I barely let myself have a minute in the morning and a minute at night. And I would be working back to back or schlepping around, doing the family stuff, right? So many years of my life, that breakneck pace, there was no peace to be had, and taking peace felt uncomfortable. It felt real uncomfortable. So this is what I mean by, like, I think there's a real gap between taking care of yourself or treating yourself like you would a friend or family member, and self-care. Like, how are you treating yourself? Like, too big of a gap for me to say, treat yourself like you treat somebody that you care about. So here's something that I want you to think about the next time you find yourself in this unsettled position and you're thinking, maybe I am in pieces. I am, like, there's the work me and there's the home me and there's the personal life me, and I'm not taking care of the me that takes care of those things. I want you to think about, how would you treat somebody you don't like, or maybe don't have a relationship at all, like a stranger? How would you treat a perfect stranger? Would you expect them to just be a human robot and do all of those things? Would you allow space for them to be able to take care of themselves even a little bit, and maybe go one step further? Maybe it's not just somebody you don't know or don't have a relationship to or is a perfect stranger to you. How would you expect them to be able to do all these things? Think about somebody you don't like. Would you want them to be going through this much pain and suffering and hustling and never give to themselves? Even somebody you don't like, would you treat them humanely? Because most of the time, those of us who have caregiving in our bones, and have had this conditioning all of our life, even the people we like the least, we would afford some kind of compassion and empathy and say, well, yeah, but they get to have some downtime. Like, they get to melt down from time to time, right? And they don't hold them accountable to a standard that's so high without doing any kind of self-care, if they're not doing self-care, without at least giving them a break and some grace when they screw up, right? So I want you to think about that. So kind of the first part of why we're in this hustle, I think, is our programming and conditioning. It just sets us up to be there. But then part of that gets internalized, right? Then what we're looking at is the fact that we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not lifting ourselves back up. We're not investing in any kind of self-care for ourselves. I mean, what do we think is going to happen? Really? Is the world going to end if we say, now that I've woken up and I'm starting to look at some of these ways in which the world thinks me, a woman, should be, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for me to always be selfless and never take care of the thing that's doing the selfless acts. That doesn't make any sense. And, as I look at self-care and look at boundaries and look at what my needs are, I haven't been at all. What do we think is going to happen if we just say no more of that old way of doing things and start to try and work towards having a whole peaceful life, that I get to be all of me, icky parts and all, things I'm not really happy that I did in my life and all, aspects of myself that I don't really care for and all, but I let myself just be all of me out in the world? What am I afraid is going to happen? That the world won't accept me? Okay. Do I accept that? That's the question. Because I think that the lack of peace, we put words on it like, well, if I let myself be all of me, people won't like me. People won't want me the way that I am. People are expecting me to do all of these other things. So we're putting this idea out there that it's because other people won't want us that way. But I think that the bigger issue really always ends up being that you don't want you that way. Well, then if you don't want you that way, of course nobody else will, right? So maybe the work is really in accepting and loving all of who you are as you are right now. Maybe that's the place to start, so you don't feel like you're just living in pieces and you can find peace in your life right now. I would encourage you to really soul search this piece for yourself. Really start to question, journal, self-reflect, go on a walk, talk about with your girlfriends. What is it about being all of me that I am so afraid I can't love for myself, that I can't accept for myself, that I can't be okay with for myself? Start talking it all out instead of hiding it and stuffing it. Start letting it all hang out, because I promise you, as you have those kinds of self-reflection conversations internally with yourself and externally with other people, you're gonna kind of out the fact that it isn't as bad as your body mind is like warding against. It's pushing it all back in that closet and doesn't want it to come out. It really isn't, there isn't that much to hide. What's the worst of it? That in your 20s, you slept with more people than you care to tell people about? Yeah, a lot of us. That you chose, to have a family and now you're kind of second guessing. I probably wouldn't have, if I had had the choice again, I might not have done that. You think that other women haven't thought that? Of course we have. Of course we have. That I went all gung ho and wanted to live my adult life and have this awesome career, hit my 40s and realized, ooh, I said no to family by doing that. At least it's never going to look in the way that I thought I could do both. And I don't know how I feel about that. You don't think really, you don't think other women think that? Of course we do. Listen, my friends, there are 8 billion people on earth. And if it's 50-50 men versus women, which it's not, because there's all sorts of gender expressions, but even so, that's 4 billion of us. I mean, come on. You don't think that somebody else has felt this way? Of course we have. Of course. And it's okay. And if this was even a stranger, you would probably allow grace for that, right? If this was even somebody you didn't like, you would probably allow, well, yeah, everybody gets to feel how they want to feel, except you won't let you feel all of you. You won't let you love every aspect of yourself. I want you to really start to reality test the fact that you've been pushing all of this stuff away and not letting yourself just be all of you. The truth of the matter is that life will start to feel centered and peaceful when you start to allow all of you to be present for all of your life. You don't tuck certain parts away when you're with these people, or hide certain parts about yourself when you're with these people. You don't hustle to be, the best of the best of the best. You let yourself be fallible. All of the sudden, life gets a lot easier, to be honest. It just gets a lot more peaceful. And this is so important at this particular stage in our life. And you're going to hear me say something you've heard me say several times on the podcast throughout this year, throughout this season. We as women, through perimenopause and into menopause, lose the biological ability to manage stress at the levels we did in our earlier life. End of story. Biologically, we are shifting how much estrogen we have available, how much progesterone we have available. And those are the things that we use, my friends, for stress management in large part. So as those levels go down, guess what? We have to show up to life differently. We're just not going to get it, more ability of it to deal with stress. We're not going to just all of a sudden magically get that back, even if you're doing something like hormone replacement therapy. So if you are living a life in pieces, it's hurting you even more now than it ever has. And it won't work going into your future. The thing you've done all of this time, putting this into the closet, not letting those skeletons out, is no longer going to work. In a post-menopausal life, for sure, but in the perimenopause years, you are racked with the fact that it is not working for you anymore. And the only true solution is to let all of it go. Let it all out. Love it as you are and live your life. And if you really think that no one is going to be okay with that, I'm sorry, but you're just not correct. Will there be people that leave parts of, like parts of you they don't want to see? Okay, yeah, maybe there will be some people in your life that don't accept that. But think about this. Why are you hustling so hard for someone that isn't in your body with you, living the rest of your life with you? You are the only one you've got. And you're the only one you have to live with 24/7 for the rest of your life. Stop living it for the few people that might opt out. And I promise you that the people who stay in, those relationships will just get better. And there will be other people that will be attracted to you, just like you are attracted to listening to people when they tell about all of themselves, when they let you see the broken parts. You like them more, do you not? You're attracted to that because you are like, oh, what a breath of fresh air that they're just being authentic. If you are authentic, you will find that for yourself and you will find relationships where that is honored. That's the reality. That is one of the biggest keys to living a centered life. And that is what I want to be the take-home message today. That if you want to live a life that's centered, you've got to find peace. And peace is happiness. Peace does allow space for more joy. It doesn't push out suffering. It doesn't push out discomfort. It just allows all of it to be there at the same time, right? It allows you to hold the paradox that you are big enough and strong enough and have broad enough shoulders that you'll be able to take whatever's coming. And anything that's coming is just, that's just part of you. It's just part of all of who you are authentically. So that's my take home message to you, my friends. Live your authentic life. Let all the skeletons out of that closet. Let yourself be all of you. That is how you're going to find peace. And peace, not living in pieces, but living at peace, will bring you a centered life, thriving. Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these two crisis resources. They're available to anybody. Pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone, text HOME, home, to 741-741 to the crisis text line. And you can find them online at crisistextline.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about.